Good morning, and welcome to Mount Tabor's bi-weekly blog. Today we're going to continue our sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount. And last week we come to this hillside. A bunch of people looking for the Messiah, and you to get the Sermon on the Mount, or to get the understanding of how different it was, you have to understand that these people were looking for battle plans. They were looking for someone to lead them. A Messiah was a literal military leader who rode in on a white horse. And so Jesus last week, as we said, sat everybody down on the hill, and here's the words. And the first one was, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." And as we talked about that last week, that especially in our day, and probably in theirs too, conjured up the image of blessed are the Eeyores. Well, things get worse today. The next words out of his mouth are blessed, or Matthew 4-6. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Now, in our day, these three are very difficult to take because they're making us not be who we are. We struggle with these three things a great deal. The world would look at this, and sometimes we look at this and say, what the text says is, blessed are the sad, the weak, and the frustrated. I want to make sure that when we leave here today, when you've listened to this blog, that we do not stay there. Death is one of the only things in life that changes us completely instantaneously. And I'm not talking about our death, but the death of a loved one, of the death of someone that we love. It's something that steps in the way. Most of our lives are battleships. It takes forever for a battleship to turn. But when death comes, it makes our battleship lives into a speedboat. Even if that death takes a long process, even if it was a long period of illness, it still feels as if the world has changed instantaneously. One time our loved one is there, the next they're gone. It is difficult sometimes to put into words what mourning does to us. It is physical. It makes us feel lost. It makes us feel like the world will never be right again. It hangs on us. That is what mourning is about. And Jesus is blessing those who mourn like that. We have the hope of a new day, of a home where death no longer occurs, and we will talk about that more in a little bit. And that is the comfort for those who have lost loved ones, for those who mourn. But there's another mourning that I think Jesus is talking about as well, that it can be included in that, is the loss of something that we never knew that we had. Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes talks about how life is meaningless. He goes through the whole book explaining over and over and over again how he tried to fill himself with the treasures and the possessions of this world and constantly fell short, looking for something. Dear friends, I have been there, where you think that your happiness is involved in something. Over and over and over, when we seek something that's out there, something, and it can become so frustrating, and the hole in our heart can become larger and larger as we mourn for what we're missing, and what we're missing is God. We mourn for the loss of relationship. We were never created to be out of relationship with God. And it is that loss that we mourn for as well. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now the next one is the hardest one for me to be with, okay? If you went through the adjectives of the people who know me over and over and over again, you'll find that meekness is one that will take a long time for you to get to. I do not consider myself to be a meek person. As a matter of fact, sometimes the visions you see of Jesus on popular television and things like that, they drive me crazy. I love the Passion Play in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, but I can't stand listening to the guy who plays Jesus always sound like he's about to cry. Jesus is always portrayed as an itty-bitty person when he was a carpenter before, chainsaws and plane sanders. He was buff. He was big. He was strong. Why do we constantly want to make him the guy who's about 5'2", 125? Arnold Schwarzenegger should be the guy playing Jesus, not the people that we see picked out. And listen, I have a very dangerous not dangerous, but disturbing competitive streak. If we play a game that you come up with, I'll play you 10,000 times till I figure out a way to win. Meekness is something I struggle with. But let me make this clear. The opposite of being meek is being prideful. There is a difference between pride and self-confidence. Pride is, I did it all myself, me, I. I did it, I'm special, I. Self-centered. I sing well because I sing well. Self-confidence says, I sing well because God has gifted me to sing well. I speak well because God has gifted me to speak well. Meekness is about giving credit where credit is due. Not being afraid to speak, but seriously stepping up and saying that God strengthens me. It is a truly self-confident act when you think about it, that Jesus died for me and he died for you, and that makes us special. But it's only special because God did it for us. We are to be meek before God. The last one is the most difficult. And the last one is about hungering and thirsting for righteousness. Now, if I asked the question, how many people knew who Snooki is? Lots of people would raise their hands. If you don't know, she is the person who is one of the cast of the Jersey Shore, a new MTV reality show. These people have no discernible talent. None. But they give a TV show because they fight and they get drunk. How many people know who the Kardashians are? What talent do they have? They have Paris Hilton. You see this junk produced over and over and over again, and I weep for my children because it's got to get better than this. More seriously, watching infomercials at night, I see children who starve to death each day while I eat ice cream. And I'm sad about that. I'm sad to see friends go off to war and fight. And I'm sad about that. I'm sad about seeing how drugs and alcohol and abuse and sex have taken over our culture, and I'm sad about that. But the problem is, I don't get angry, I don't get frustrated, I don't hunger and thirst for righteousness. I say that's the way it is, and let it go. Our lives as a Christian is about hoping for a day when justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. We do not sit back. We are always moving forward. We are those who are to stand up, who are to speak, who do not look at injustice and go, that's sad, but we move on. Injustice is supposed to irritate us. It's supposed to make us mad. It's supposed to get us frustrated. It's supposed to make it where we reach out and do more. Christianity is about a hope of a day when Christ comes and there'll be no more pain, no more suffering, no more death, no more junk. But we're not there yet. And a Christian's nature is to attack, is to be on the offense. And being on the offense means seeking righteousness. My pastor has a sign on his wall, someone needle pointed for him, I'm sure he didn't do it, that says, pray for a good harvest, but keep on hoeing. In other words, it means work like it's all on you, knowing that if without God, you're never going to win. We have to be those who seek out righteousness and not get bogged down by the world. The world says this sermon was about the sad, the weak, and the frustrated. But where you see sadness, I see a hope for unified families and a hope for relationship with God. Where you see weakness, I see strength in putting God in His proper place in our lives. And where you see frustration, I agree. But I also say it's frustration that fuels a fire that can bring salvation to the world. Dear friends, if you let these words change you, they can. I ask that you open your hearts to what God is telling you today. And I pray that God used me to bring the word to you. God bless each and every one of you. Our preview sermon will be this week on the next section of the Sermon on the Mount. We shall see you then.